The church smelled like lilies and wet wool. October rain drummed on the roof, steady as a metronome, while the organ whispered a hymn I couldn't place. I stood in the aisle with my hand on the back of the pew, fingers pressed into the polished wood like it could hold me up. My son's name, Ethan, was stitched in blue on the ribbon around a wreath, 27 letters total if you counted the dates. I tried not to count anything. People hugged me. Their coats were cold and damp, and every embrace left a chill on my suit. Someone slipped a tissue into my palm like I might not know what a tissue is. The pastor spoke. Words about light and rest drifted over the pews, soft as dust. I kept waiting for Ethan's laugh to crack the air and end this terrible play. He had that laugh that tipped at the end, like a dare, the kind of sound you'd chase down a hallway. All I heard now was rain. A baby cried in the back, a chair scraped. My sister whispered, "Mark, sit." But my knees locked. I wanted to stay standing, like if I moved I'd admit Ethan was actually in that box. I kept my eyes on the framed photo at the front, him in a denim jacket on the pier at Lake Erie, hair in his eyes, sun burning the water white behind him. He looked alive enough to argue with me about it. My phone buzzed. The sound was small, guilty. I slipped it out because I needed anything that wasn't this. A notification bloomed on the screen. An email preview. Subject line in cheerful font, like confetti. Invoice from Tranquility Cove Day Spa. Amount due, $486.42. The sender? Kayla. My daughter-in-law, Ethan's wife. She wasn't here. She hadn't been here since the viewing last night, when she stood rigid as a fence post, eyes dry, then vanished in a gust of perfume and excuses. Overwhelmed, she'd said, fingers tapping her wrist like she'd misplaced a bracelet. People grieved differently. Sure, I told myself that until the words went dull. The organ rose, then fell. I could taste metal on my tongue, that coppery tang that rides with panic. Another buzz. A text this time, her name lighting the screen. Can you handle this? I'm not in a good headspace. The spa needed a card on file. I knew the tone. Small, polite, practiced. The same tone she used when she asked Ethan to skip Sunday dinners, when she told me I was a bit intense about car maintenance, about budgets, about him. A hand touched my elbow. My ex-wife, Lauren, eyes swollen, mascara pooled under them like bruises. "What is it?" she mouthed. I turned the phone face down against my thigh and nodded at the pulpit, at the neat line the pastor drew across the air with his hand. There's a flavor to grief other people don't talk about. It's bitter, but it's also sticky, and it picks up everything. Anger, doubt, memory, the scent of lemon oil on polished pews, the way a stranger's cough can feel like a personal insult. I gripped the pew harder and felt the wood bite my palm. In my chest, something tightened like a winch. When the pastor invited anyone to speak, I felt the whole room lean forward. My sister tugged my sleeve. "Mark, say something." My mouth was dry enough to crack. I walked anyway, shoes whispering on the runner. My left knee clicked, a small mechanical betrayal that suddenly sounded louder than rain. At the lectern, I set both hands on the edges because my fingers were trembling. "I'm Ethan's dad," I said. My voice came out rough, gravel scraped over asphalt. He was the kid who fixed your lawnmower and never charged you. He was the man who walked the neighbor's dog when they had the baby. He was the guy who'd say, 'I'm on my way,' and actually be on his way." I looked at the photo. I could feel the heat from the standing lights the funeral home had set up, warm on my face, too warm. "He taught me to slow down," I said. He said, "Dad, not every problem needs a wrench." He was wrong about that. Some do. A few people chuckled through their tears. It loosened something in me. He loved hard. He forgave quick. He deserved more years than he got. My phone buzzed again against my hip. I paused. People shifted. Somewhere a coat zipper rasped. I exhaled. "But he left us with a job," I said. "To live the way he did, with our hands open. I'm going to try. I promise you, son, I'm going to try." I stepped down. Applause rippled, careful and brief. Lauren squeezed my hand, a quick press, like a note passed under a door. We sat. The casket gleamed under the chapel lights, a smooth, impossible curve. Rain kept time. When the service ended, the ushers opened the doors and the smell of wet asphalt rolled in. Black umbrellas bloomed like crows outside. People formed a slow line toward me. I nodded, hugged, heard 100 versions of, "If you need anything." The phrase thinned until it was just noise. Another buzz. Another email from Tranquility Cove. Second notice. "Please settle today." I stared at it until the letters blurred. My jaw pulsed. I wanted to smash the phone. I wanted to smash the day and start over. Instead, I pocketed it and moved through the line, shaking hands that smelled of lotion and rain. At the curb, the hearse idled, low and patient. I watched the pallbearers, Ethan's friends from the shop, square their shoulders and slide their hands under the handles. My hands twitched uselessly. One of the boys, Miguel, met my eyes. "We got him, Mr. Turner," he said, voice steady. "We got him." I nodded. The smell of gasoline cut through the lilies. The sky hung low and the rain eased to a mist that beaded on my eyelashes. I reached into my pocket, thumbed the phone awake, and opened Kayla's message. There was a photo attached. Her legs in a white robe, toes painted a pink I'd never seen her wear, a glass of something pale on a tray. The caption, "I can't face people right now. Handle what needs handling." I felt something in me go cold and clear, like a lake in winter. Grief had been a fog. This was a blade. I slipped the phone away and stepped forward to the casket with the boys, shoulder to shoulder under the gray light, and put my hand on the cool metal. "Ethan," I whispered, breath ghosting off the surface. "I'll handle it." Then I looked up at the road ahead, at the line of cars with their lights on, and realized I meant more than the burial. By the time we reached the cemetery, the rain had turned into a gray curtain, the kind that blurs everything. Headstones, faces, even time. The pastor said a few more words I barely heard. My coat was soaked through, and the cold had crept under my collar, right into my bones. Ethan's casket sank into the earth inch by inch, the ropes squeaking under the weight. I couldn't look away. Lauren sobbed beside me, her hand gripping the sleeve of my coat. I didn't move. Couldn't. I felt like if I blinked, he'd disappear for good. The sound of shovels hitting dirt started, a rhythm that didn't care about grief. Miguel tossed the first scoop in. It landed with a dull thud that felt like a punch. I wanted to yell at them to stop, to wait, to give me one more minute, but that minute had been gone for weeks. When the crowd began to thin, I saw my reflection in a car window. Gray hair plastered to my forehead, eyes that didn't look like mine. My phone buzzed again. The screen lit up. "Kayla." "How did it go?" I stared at the words until they blurred. How did it go? Like it was a conference call. Like her husband wasn't being covered in mud while she was probably sipping cucumber water. I typed back, "You could have been here." Then deleted it. Typed again, "He would have wanted you here." Deleted that too. Finally, I just locked the screen and shoved the phone back in my pocket. Miguel came over, boots caked with mud. "We're heading to the diner, Mr. Turner. Just for coffee. You want to come?" I shook my head. "Thanks, kid. I'll catch up later." When they left, I stayed by the grave. The cemetery was quiet except for the rain tapping on my umbrella. I looked at the mound of dirt and whispered, "You married the wrong woman, son." The words came out low, rough, maybe cruel, but they were true. By the time I reached my truck, my hands were shaking. I sat behind the wheel, the engine idling, heat blasting. The spa's name still glowed in my inbox. $486.42. I opened the message again, this time reading every line. Deep tissue therapy, aromatherapy add-on, hot stone deluxe. Oh, I laughed out loud, a sound too sharp to be real. I drove home with the radio off. The roads were slick, the world blurred by rain and grief. I didn't notice when I started gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I got to the house, everything was exactly the same as when Ethan left for that last drive. His toolbox by the garage door, his muddy work boots by the mat, his half-finished project under a tarp in the yard. I stood there dripping in the doorway, staring at those boots. Then I took a breath that hurt to swallow and said, "You'd hate what she's become." My phone buzzed one more time. Another message. "Kayla, hey, when you have time, can you pick up Ethan's things from the apartment? I can't bear to go back yet." The funeral flowers were still fresh on my coat sleeve. My son wasn't even cold in the ground, and she was delegating grief. I didn't reply, but I knew then I wasn't done with her. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Every floorboard groaned under my weight as I paced from room to room. The rain had stopped, but the sound of water dripping from the gutters kept me awake. It was the kind of silence that made you think too much. Ethan's photos were still up on the wall. Him at Little League, high school graduation, the day he opened his auto shop. He was 25 in that one, grinning in front of a red Mustang he rebuilt from scratch. I'd helped him find the parts. That car was supposed to be his future, not his coffin. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone. The spa receipt was still open. My thumb hovered over Kayla's name. I wanted to call her, demand an explanation, maybe just hear some hint of guilt in her voice. But I didn't. Instead, I poured a drink, then another. By midnight, I'd made a decision. I grabbed my keys, a garbage bag, and drove to Ethan and Kayla's apartment, the kind of place young couples pick when they still believe in things. White siding, neat lawns, fairy lights hanging from balconies. Their second-floor window was dark. I knew she wasn't there. I climbed the stairs, heart thudding, half expecting her to swing open the door and start another argument about boundaries. But the door was locked, and I still had the spare key Ethan had given me last year. Just in case, Dad. The air inside was stale, like perfume and dust. The lights flicked on, and the place looked like it hadn't been lived in for weeks. A half-empty bottle of wine sat on the counter next to unopened mail. On the fridge, a photo of them on the boardwalk. Ethan's arm around her waist, her smile polished and perfect. I opened the closet. His jacket still hung there, the scent of motor oil clinging to the fabric. I ran my fingers over one sleeve and felt that sting in my chest again. The kind that feels like someone tightening a belt around your heart. Then I noticed something. Her side of the closet, empty. No dresses, no shoes, no trace she'd ever lived there. Just his things, left behind like an abandoned life. On the nightstand was a small box. Ethan's wedding ring, the one she said she couldn't find for the burial. It was right there, shining under the lamplight. I felt the heat rise in my throat. I grabbed the garbage bag and started packing. His tools, his books, his baseball glove. I wasn't leaving a single memory of him in this place. Not for her. When I was almost done, I saw something tucked under a stack of papers on the kitchen table. An envelope. My name on it, written in Ethan's handwriting. My knees gave out for a second. I sat down and tore it open. Dad, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say what I should have said more. I know I drove you crazy sometimes. I just wanted to do things my way. But you were right about Kayla. You saw things I didn't. I thought I could fix it. I was wrong. Please don't let her twist what happened. And please take care of the shop. It's yours now. Love you, old man. Ethan. The words blurred through my tears. My pulse hammered in my ears. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my jacket pocket. As I turned to leave, headlights swept across the living room wall. A car pulling into the lot. A white Lexus. Her Lexus. I froze. The door latch clicked from the outside. I didn't move. Then her voice floated in from the hallway, bright and careless. Alexa, lights on. The room lit up again, and there she was. Perfect makeup, hair pinned, holding a shopping bag. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. Mark? What the hell are you doing here? I stood up slowly, the letter still burning in my pocket. Picking up what's left of my son. Her lips tightened. You can't just barge in here. Don't. My voice came out lower than I expected. Don't talk to me like I'm some stranger. You weren't at his funeral. You sent me a bill for a massage. She rolled her eyes. I was grieving in my own way. Everyone handles trauma differently. Trauma, I said, stepping closer. You called the day after he died asking about the insurance paperwork. Her jaw clenched. Because someone had to handle it. The air between us felt electric, heavy. I could smell her perfume. Something expensive and sharp. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Ethan left me a letter, I said quietly. That got her attention. Her eyes flicked to my pocket just for a second. A letter? Yeah, I said. And it changes everything. Her face paled, but she tried to smile. You're drunk, Mark. Go home. But I didn't move. I just watched her walk into the bedroom pretending she wasn't shaking. When the door slammed behind her, I finally exhaled. She knew about the letter, and that meant she had something to hide. I sat there in the dark for a long time after her door shut. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, and every few seconds I could hear the faint creak of her moving in the bedroom. I wasn't sure if she was packing or pacing, or maybe calling someone. I didn't care. I ran my thumb over the edge of Ethan's letter again. The paper had softened from the rain on my coat, but his handwriting, strong, deliberate, still cut through. Please don't let her twist what happened. I stood up and looked around the apartment one last time. Every corner felt like a lie now. The wedding photo on the wall, the matching coffee mugs, the little wooden "Love Lives Here" sign she'd probably bought for Instagram. I wanted to tear it all down. The bedroom door cracked open. Kayla stepped out, dressed in a silk robe, phone still in her hand. Her voice came out quieter now. "Mark, I didn't mean to upset you earlier. I know how this looks." "Looks?" I said. "You skipped your husband's funeral." "I couldn't handle it," she said, eyes wet but calculated. "I was falling apart." "No," I said, taking a step closer. "You were at a spa, Kayla. Falling apart looks different." She flinched, then straightened. "Ethan wouldn't want you talking to me like this." I stared at her. "You don't get to use his name like that." Something flickered in her expression. Fear, or maybe guilt. "What's this about a letter?" she asked carefully. I smiled without warmth. "If you have to ask, you already know what's in it." Her voice hardened. "You shouldn't be going through his things. He wouldn't want that." "He wanted me to read it," I said. "He wrote it to me." The silence between us stretched until it hurt. Then she exhaled, slow, like she'd made a decision. "You're grieving. I get that. But if you start digging into things that don't concern you, you're going to regret it." That made me laugh. A dry, humorless sound. "Was that a threat?" "It's advice," she said, stepping past me toward the door. "You should go, Mark, before you do something stupid." I let her pass. I didn't move until I heard the bedroom door click again. Then I walked to the counter, grabbed the spa bill, folded it once, and slid it into my pocket next to Ethan's letter. When I stepped outside, the night air hit me hard. Cold, sharp, real. The parking lot was empty except for her Lexus. I looked at it for a moment, then at the light still glowing through the curtains. That woman wasn't grieving. She was hiding, and I was going to find out what. As I got into my truck, I looked at the letter again under the glow of the dashboard light. One line stood out now that I hadn't really seen before. "Please take care of the shop. It's yours now." The shop. Ethan's pride. His place. Maybe that's where the truth started. I turned the key, the engine roared to life, and for the first time since the funeral, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, the sky was bruised gray, the kind of cold that seeps into your hands before you even lock the door behind you. I didn't sleep much, just stared at the ceiling, hearing Ethan's voice echo through the shop in my memory. "Don't overthink it, Dad. Just turn the wrench." He used to say that every time I double-checked a bolt or a gasket. By the time I pulled up to the shop, the neon Turner Automotive sign flickered weakly against the overcast light. Ethan had painted that sign himself 2 summers ago. Said the new font looked cleaner, more modern. I'd told him it looked like a diner menu. He'd laughed, told me I was just getting old. That laugh still lived in the walls. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Oil, rubber, and faint cologne. His cologne. The radio on the counter still had a layer of dust on the dial, frozen on his favorite oldies station. The workbench was a mess, tools scattered, a pair of gloves still half crumpled where he'd left them. For a second I just stood there, trying to breathe through it. The kind of silence that fills every corner until it starts to hum. I walked to his desk. Bills, invoices, and a calendar with Renew Insurance circled in red. A date 2 days before his accident. My stomach tightened. I flipped through the paperwork, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, under a stack of receipts, I found a manila folder labeled Kayla, Personal. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Inside were bank statements, joint accounts, withdrawals, transfers to an unfamiliar name, Jared Finch. The amounts weren't small either. $2,000 here, $5,000 there, spread across months. I leaned against the counter, trying to steady my breathing. The numbers blurred for a moment, my pulse loud in my ears. Ethan wasn't stupid. If he'd printed these, he'd noticed something. Maybe that's why he'd written the letter. Maybe that's what he meant by "don't let her twist it." The door creaked behind me. "Mr. Turner?" I turned. Miguel stood there, cap pulled low, rain dripping off his jacket. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said. "I saw your truck." "It's fine," I said, setting the folder down. "Just checking on things." He nodded slowly. "Kayla stopped by last week, before everything. Asked for the shop's spare keys. Said Ethan told her to keep them in case of emergencies." I frowned. "Did she take anything?" "Not that I saw," he said. "But she looked nervous. Kept checking her phone. Then she left in a hurry." That clenched it. Something was off. "Listen," I said, lowering my voice. "You didn't hear this from me, but if Kayla shows up again, don't let her in. Not without me here. Got it?" Miguel hesitated. "She's Ethan's wife." "She was," I said. My tone came out harder than I meant. "Just trust me on this." He nodded and left. I watched him go, then turned back to the desk. The folder still sat there open like an invitation. Jared Finch. The name looped through my head like a ticking clock. I grabbed my phone and typed it into Google. Nothing. I added Ohio, Toledo, Cleveland. Still nothing. Just one hit. A LinkedIn profile with no picture, no details, only a location. Columbus. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I was getting closer. Before I left, I opened the small safe Ethan kept under the desk. It was dusty, untouched. The key was taped to the bottom of the drawer. I'd taught him that trick myself. Inside was an envelope, thick, sealed, with "in case something happens," scrawled on the front in his handwriting. My hands went cold. I tore it open. Inside were photos. Ethan and Kayla at a restaurant, but the timestamp on the bottom was dated just 3 days before his death. Except Ethan wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her, toward a man at another table. Blonde hair, sharp suit. The caption scribbled on the back said one word: Jared. I sank into his chair, staring at the picture until my eyes burned. That night when I got home, I poured myself another drink and spread the contents of the folder and the letter across the table. The rain had started again outside, tapping steady on the window. Ethan had known something. He'd been scared. Maybe he'd tried to confront her. Maybe that accident wasn't one. I looked at his handwriting one last time. "Please take care of the shop." That wasn't about keeping the business alive. It was about finishing what he'd started. My phone buzzed again, Kayla's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring out. Then another text followed. "Kayla, we need to talk. It's important." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I typed back, "Tomorrow. At the shop. Noon." She replied instantly. "Kayla, fine. But you won't like what I have to say." I put the phone down, exhaled slow, and looked out at the rain. She was right. But for the first time since my son's funeral, I was ready to hear it. Morning came gray and hollow. I woke to the low hum of the refrigerator and the smell of burnt coffee drifting from the pot I'd forgotten to turn off. The house felt emptier than ever. Quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that pressed on your ears, made you aware of every breath, every heartbeat. I stood at the kitchen window watching fog roll over the wet lawn and tried to imagine Ethan walking up the driveway like he used to, boots tracking oil and dust, grin crooked, saying, "You're up early, old man." The silence that answered back was deafening. I showered, shaved, and dressed in the same clothes I wore to his funeral. It wasn't intentional. I just didn't think about it. The jacket still smelled faintly of rain and lilies. When I slipped my hand into the inside pocket, my fingers brushed the folded edge of his letter. I left it there. Some things you keep close, not for comfort, but because letting go would feel like betrayal. At the shop, the lot was still damp from last night's storm. The open sign buzzed weakly, half-lit. I flipped it to closed and waited. Noon couldn't come fast enough. I tried to busy myself, checked the oil drums, rearranged a few tools, but my hands wouldn't stay steady. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps. Every gust through the open bay door made me turn my head. When her car finally pulled in, the sound cut through the air like a blade. The Lexus stopped short, and Kayla stepped out, umbrella snapping open with practiced grace. She was dressed like she was meeting a banker, not her dead husband's father. Black heels, long coat, hair pulled into a tight knot. Even her grief looked styled. She didn't see me at first, just stood there scanning the empty lot like she was rehearsing something. Then her eyes met mine, and she smiled, a tight professional curve of the mouth that didn't reach her eyes. "Mark," she said, voice bright, rehearsed. "You look tired." I wiped my hands on a rag and nodded toward the office. Inside. "Howdy," she hesitated, then followed. The air between us carried the faint smell of her perfume, something citrusy and expensive that clashed with the oil and grease of the shop. She perched on the edge of Ethan's chair like she didn't want to touch anything, her gaze flicking toward the workbench, the calendar, the framed photo of her and Ethan at the grand opening. Her hand trembled slightly before she hid it in her lap. "I didn't come here for a fight," she said. "Good," I said flatly. "Because I don't have much fight left." For a moment neither of us spoke. The only sound was the tick of the clock on the wall, slow and deliberate. Then I slid the folder across the desk. "You know what this is?" Her eyes flicked down, and I caught it. The faint twitch in her jaw, the subtle panic in her throat. "Where did you get that?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "Tell me who Jared Finch is." She looked up, expression freezing into something between annoyance and fear. "You've been going through our private records?" "Ethan's records," I corrected. "You drained money from his account. Thousands. I want to know why." She laughed softly, but it wasn't real. "You think you're the first man who's ever misunderstood a transfer? Jared's a business contact. We were working on a loan for the shop. Then why's your name on the transfers?" Her eyes narrowed. "Because Ethan trusted me. Something you never could." I leaned forward, voice low and even. "He trusted you enough to write me a letter. Said not to let you twist what happened." That landed. Her breath hitched, eyes flashing with something raw. Anger, maybe guilt. "He wrote you a letter?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "And it doesn't paint you in a pretty light." She stood abruptly, knocking the chair back. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she said, voice rising. "Ethan was unstable. He was drinking, making threats. That accident wasn't my fault." I took a step closer, heart pounding, every muscle coiled. "Who said it was?" For a long moment we just stared at each other, her breath shallow, mine heavy. Then she smoothed her coat, gathering herself. "You think you're uncovering some big secret," she said quietly. "But you're not ready for the truth, Mark. Ethan wasn't who you thought he was." She started toward the door, but I caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough to make her stop. "Then tell me who he was," I said. Her gaze flicked to the letter peeking from my jacket pocket, then back to my face. "You'll find out soon enough," she said. "But when you do, you'll wish you'd left it alone." The door shut behind her, leaving the faint echo of her heels fading into the parking lot. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where she'd been, the smell of her perfume still clinging to the air like smoke. I turned back to the desk, to the photos, the papers, the letter. Ethan's world cracked open. There was more to this, something big enough to make her scared, to make her lie, maybe something worth killing over. And whatever it was, it had just stepped into my life, uninvited and unfinished. I didn't move for a long time after she left. The clock on the wall ticked toward 1, each second louder than the last. The shop was still except for the faint hiss of rain outside and the occasional drip from the roof into a metal bucket. I stood there staring at the papers, at Ethan's handwriting on the calendar, and felt something shifting inside me. It wasn't anger anymore. It was resolve, cold, steady, almost surgical. I picked up the photo again, the one with Ethan and the man in the background, Jared Finch. The image was grainy, but his face was clear enough. Blonde, polished, expensive suit, eyes like someone who never worked a day with his hands. I didn't recognize him, but I knew the type. Corporate teeth, smooth talk, predators dressed as professionals. Ethan had circled the man's face in ink, pressed so hard the pen had nearly torn the photo. That wasn't paranoia. That was a message. I grabbed my phone and tried the number for the insurance company again, the one Ethan used for the shop's policy. A woman answered soft-spoken, the kind of tone they train for customer service. I gave her Ethan's full name, the claim number from one of his files, told her I was his father handling final affairs. There was a pause, then keys clacking on her end. "Mr. Turner," she said, "it looks like the claim was closed 3 days before his passing. There was an updated beneficiary listed." My heart froze. "Beneficiary?" "Yes, sir. It used to be you. Then it was updated to a Ms. Kayla Turner." I gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white. "And the payout?" "Processed and transferred," she said. "Wire confirmation the morning after the accident." I thanked her, though I barely heard my own voice. My throat felt raw, dry. She'd known. She'd made sure the money moved before his body was even cold. The kind of precision that doesn't come from grief. It comes from planning. The bell over the front door jingled. I turned fast, heart kicking hard. It wasn't Kayla this time. It was a man. Tall, broad, late 40s maybe. Black coat, clean shave, a faint scar down his cheek. He carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. "You Mark Turner?" he asked. His voice was calm, deep, not a question so much as a confirmation. I nodded, slow. "Who's asking?" He reached into his coat, pulled out a business card, and placed it on the counter. "State Police. Detective Raymond Cole." The card was slightly damp from the rain. "You got a few minutes?" I gestured toward the office. "You investigating Ethan's accident?" "Something like that," he said, stepping inside. He scanned the room quickly, eyes sharp, taking in every detail. "You mind if I sit?" "Go ahead." He sat, leaned forward, elbows on knees. "We ran a full review on your son's crash. The official report said hydroplaning, but the mechanic who examined the wreck found signs of tampering. Brake line punctured clean, like with a tool. Not wear and tear." My stomach dropped. "You're saying it wasn't an accident?" "I'm saying someone wanted it to look like one," Cole said. "And before you ask, no, we don't have enough to open a homicide case yet. But if you know anything that might help us connect dots, now's the time." I looked at Ethan's desk. The folder, the letter, the photo. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to hand it all over, let the law handle it. The other part, the louder part, didn't trust anyone to get it right. "He left me something," I said finally. "A letter. Said not to let her twist what happened." Cole's brow lifted. "Her? You mean his wife?" I nodded. He studied me for a long moment, then pulled out a small notepad. "You think she's involved?" "I think she knows more than she's saying," I said. "And there's a man, Jared Finch. Money transfers, insurance changes, all right before the crash." Cole scribbled the names down, then leaned back. "That's enough to get us started. But Mark," his tone softened, almost fatherly, "don't go digging on your own. If she did something, she's already 3 steps ahead. Let us handle it." I looked him dead in the eye. "With all due respect, Detective, I buried my son while she was getting a facial. I'm not sitting this out." He studied me for a long moment, then slipped his card across the desk. "Then at least call me before you do something stupid." He stood, buttoned his coat, and left as quietly as he'd come. The rain started again, soft but relentless. I turned the card over in my hand, then looked at the photo one more time. Jared's smirk, Kayla's perfect smile, Ethan's eyes looking somewhere else entirely. I felt a pulse of clarity cut through the fog of grief. If the system moved too slow, I'd move faster. That night, I sat in my truck across from Kayla's apartment, headlights off, watching the windows. Around 10, the lights on the second floor flickered on. A shadow moved past the curtain. Tall, broad shoulders. Not hers. My pulse hammered in my ears. She wasn't alone. I gripped the steering wheel and whispered to myself, "All right, son, I'm listening." Because now I knew. Ethan hadn't just died. He'd been erased, and I was going to find out by who. The figure behind her curtains moved again, slow, confident, like a man who belonged there. I lowered in my seat and killed the engine. The night outside was dense with rain, the kind that doesn't fall in drops but in sheets, soft enough to muffle every sound but heavy enough to feel on your skin. The dashboard clock glowed 10:07 p.m. The Lexus sat in its usual spot, water streaming down the windshield like veins. She hadn't noticed me. Not yet. I waited. The kind of waiting that chews at you. Every minute stretched thin and sharp. My hand hovered near the glove compartment where I kept Ethan's old flashlight. Heavy metal, cold to the touch. I wasn't here to use it, but it helped to hold something solid, something real. At 10:20, the shadow crossed the window again. A man, taller than Ethan, broad shoulders under a white dress shirt. The curtain shifted just enough for me to catch a glimpse. Blonde hair, strong jaw. Even in the half-light, I recognized him. Jared Finch. My chest tightened, the kind of pressure that makes it hard to breathe. The photo from the shop flashed in my mind. Ethan staring at that same man across a restaurant table. Kayla's hand on his arm, smiling like nothing was wrong. Now here Jared was, in her apartment, moving like he owned it. They were talking. I couldn't hear them through the rain, but I could read the rhythm of their gestures. Kayla's movements were quick, agitated. His were slower, more deliberate, like someone reassuring a nervous accomplice. At one point, she pointed toward the window, and I ducked lower, pulse kicking hard against my ribs. The front door opened a moment later. Jared stepped out first, adjusting his collar, glancing around the parking lot. He carried a small black case, maybe a briefcase, maybe something else. He didn't see me. He got into a dark gray BMW and pulled away, tires slicing through puddles. Kayla stood in the doorway, arms wrapped tight around herself, watching him go. When the car disappeared, she leaned against the frame, head tilted back like she was trying to breathe. I thought I saw her wipe a tear, but maybe it was just the rain. I stayed there until the lights went out upstairs. Then I started the truck and followed the BMW. The highway was slick, reflecting streetlights in long silver ribbons. I kept 2 cars back, headlights off. The guy drove clean. No weaving, no sudden moves. Just calm, steady control. Eventually, he turned off near the industrial park, a dead zone after dark, rows of warehouses and old factories gone silent. He pulled into one with a half-lit sign that read, Finch and Associates Consulting. I parked a block away, rain hammering the roof, and watched him unlock the door and disappear inside. Consulting. Right. I thought about calling Detective Cole, but my hand never reached for the phone. I could already hear the conversation. Don't interfere, Mark. Stay home, let us handle it. But I'd done enough sitting home. My son was dead, his wife was lying, and this man was the ghost connecting them both. I stepped out of the truck. The cold hit like a slap, wind cutting through my jacket. I moved around the side of the building, boots splashing through puddles, and found a side door left slightly ajar. No security lights, no cameras I could see. Just the hum of power somewhere deep inside. Inside, the place smelled like dust and printer toner. Desks lined the walls, covered in unopened mail, a few monitors still glowing faintly. One of them displayed financial spreadsheets, balances, transfers, dates. My eyes caught a line of numbers that looked familiar. The same account code from Ethan's bank statements. And there it was again. Kayla's name, listed beside a transfer marked Personal Retainer. My stomach twisted. Retainer. I scrolled through the file list on the screen. Another document sat open. Client Summary, Turner Auto. Ethan's business. The notes were short, clinical. Projected liquidation viable. Spousal cooperation confirmed. Vehicle incident pending finalization. That word, incident. Cold, clean, mechanical. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I turned fast, hand tightening around the flashlight. Jared stood in the doorway, face half in shadow. One eyebrow raised like he'd just caught a kid sneaking into a shed. Mr. Turner, he said. His voice was calm, even friendly. You shouldn't be here. I didn't answer. He took a slow step closer. I know you're upset. Losing a son, that's unimaginable. He said it like a line he'd rehearsed. But you're making a mistake digging around in things you don't understand. I nodded toward the screen. You mean like this? Spousal cooperation, vehicle incident? His jaw tensed. That's confidential. So was my son's life, I said, voice low. He sighed, set his hands on his hips. Look, this was business. Ethan got involved in something he couldn't control. The debts were his, not Kayla's. He made bad choices. Yeah? I said. And you just happened to walk away with his money? Not his, he said, tone tightening. Ours. There it was. The flicker of arrogance. The kind of truth that slips out when someone thinks they've already won. "You killed him," I said. Not a question, just air and certainty. He smiled faintly. "That's a dangerous thing to say, Mr. Turner." I raised the flashlight a little, enough for the metal to catch the glow from the monitor. "So is puncturing brake lines." He took a step closer, eyes hardening. "You have no proof, and if you keep snooping, you'll lose more than your son." My heart hammered, but I didn't back down. "You think I'm scared of you?" "I think you're tired," he said softly. "And alone." For a long second, neither of us moved. Just rain against the windows, wind in the rafters, the hum of the monitors. Then he turned and walked out, smooth and deliberate, leaving the door swinging open behind him. I stood there shaking, adrenaline burning through every muscle. I knew I should have followed him, but instead I sat at his desk and copied every file I could onto a flash drive from my keychain. If the cops wouldn't act fast, I would. When I left, dawn was breaking, pale light pushing through clouds. My truck smelled like wet leather and rust. I set the flash drive on the seat beside me, next to Ethan's letter, and whispered, "You were right, kid." She twisted it, but I'm untwisting it now. The sun broke over the horizon, thin and sharp, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt something close to purpose. The morning light was too bright after that night. It bled through the blinds in thin, violent streaks, cutting across the living room and burning the dust in the air. I hadn't slept. I'd come home soaked through, tossed the flash drive on the table, and sat there until the sky turned from black to blue to gray. My head throbbed, but my thoughts were razor sharp. No fog left, no confusion. Just focus. I brewed coffee that tasted like rust and stared at the flash drive on the table. That little sliver of plastic felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. It was proof, or close enough to it. But proof didn't mean justice. Not when the people involved had money, lawyers, and no conscience. I'd seen enough of the world to know that truth doesn't always win on its own. Sometimes it needs a push. By 8 o'clock, I was parked outside the police precinct. The building was small, low brick, the kind of place that looked tired before noon. I carried the flash drive in my jacket pocket, my fingers locked around it like it might run away. Detective Cole's card sat on the dash, water-stained from the rain. I told myself this was the smart move. Hand it over, let the law take it from here. That's what Ethan would have wanted. But as I sat there, I saw her car, Kayla's white Lexus, parked crooked in the front space like she owned the world. She stepped out in dark sunglasses and a tailored coat, holding a folder pressed to her chest. She looked composed, not mourning, not afraid. Composed. It hit me then. She was one step ahead again. She'd come to control the story before I could. I watched her walk inside, slow and deliberate, like she'd practiced the speech she was about to give. Maybe she was handing over her version of events, painting Ethan as unstable, paranoid, drunk, the words she'd thrown at me at the shop. I could already hear her voice, calm and trembling in all the right places. I just didn't know how to help him. I put the truck in gear and pulled away. I wasn't giving her the chance to twist this too. Cole meant well, but he'd listened to her. People like him always did. Pretty, composed, grieving widows had a way of bending the truth into sympathy. Instead, I drove to Ethan's shop. The air inside was still heavy with oil and memory, the light from the windows cutting across the floor in long bands. I turned on the computer, the same one I'd used the day before, and loaded the files I'd copied. There were dozens of them. Contracts, transfers, memos, each one more rotten than the last. The pattern was clear now. Finch and Associates had been laundering money through small businesses, car shops, plumbing companies, mechanics. They'd use fake loans and consulting fees, then push the owners into debt. When they couldn't pay, the assets changed hands. Clean on paper, dirty underneath. And Ethan, my kid, my stubborn, good-hearted boy, had stumbled into their web. I found one email thread that stopped me cold. It was between Jared and Kayla, dated 2 days before the crash. From Kayla Turner to Jared Finch. Subject, Turner situation. He's getting suspicious. I think he knows about the transfers. He mentioned calling the bank. We need to finish this before he ruins everything. Then Jared's reply, Relax. Accidents happen every day. You'll get your share soon enough. I sat back, hand over my mouth, my vision blurred, not from tears, from rage. Cold, absolute, unfiltered rage. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Mr. Turner," the voice said, smooth and low. "Jared, you've been busy." I didn't say a word. He continued, tone almost casual. "You shouldn't have gone into my office. That was a mistake. But I'm willing to be reasonable. Bring me the flash drive, and we can make all this disappear." I let the silence hang, long enough for him to fill it with his own arrogance. "You think you scare me?" I finally said. He laughed softly. "No, Mark. I think you're a man with nothing left to lose. That makes you dangerous, but it also makes you sloppy." Then he hung up. The shop felt smaller after that. The air thickened, my pulse pounding in my ears. I knew what came next. They'd come for the files. Or for me. Maybe both. I wasn't sure which one they'd prefer. I printed everything. Every email, every transaction, every line. Stacked the pages in a manila folder and sealed it tight. If something happened to me, someone had to see it. I slid it into a metal lockbox under the counter, the same place Ethan used to hide his spare cash. Then I called Lauren, my ex-wife, Ethan's mother. She answered on the third ring. "Mark, you okay?" Her voice was soft, raw. It cut right through me. We hadn't talked much since the funeral. Too much pain, too many old wounds. But I needed her to hear this, even if I couldn't tell her everything. "I need you to stay somewhere else tonight," I said. "Just for a few days." "What? Why? Mark, what's going on?" "I'll explain soon, just promise me." A pause. "You're scaring me." "Promise?" She sighed, then whispered, "Okay." When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the glass door of the shop. The man staring back looked older than I remembered. Eyes bloodshot, lines cut deep. But there was something else there too. Something I hadn't seen since before Ethan died. Purpose. The rain started again, light but steady, tapping on the metal roof like a countdown. I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark, waiting. Because I knew this wasn't over. Someone was coming, and I was ready. By midnight, the storm had stopped, but the air outside still smelled of rain and metal. I sat behind the counter with the lights off, listening to the hum of the fridge in the break room and the faint tick of the wall clock. Every sound in the shop felt amplified. The creak of the rafters, the slow drip from a pipe somewhere in the dark. I'd been waiting for hours. The phone vibrated once on the counter. No number, just a single message. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." I stared at it until the glow faded. My hand went automatically to the drawer where I'd kept the flashlight, then to the small wrench I'd left beside it. Something about the words didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise. A sound came from outside. Tires rolling slow on gravel. Headlights flared through the front windows, slicing across the room before they cut out. A car door opened, then closed softly. Footsteps on wet pavement. Slow, unhurried. I didn't move. I let my breathing settle, eyes on the faint reflection in the window. A shape crossed the glass. Then came the knock. Just one. Firm. Confident. "Mark," a man's voice said. "We need to talk." "Jared." I picked up the wrench, heavy and cold in my hand, and stepped out from behind the counter. The door's glass rattled with another knock. "You're making this worse than it has to be," he said, voice even. "Let's be adults." I unlocked the door but didn't open it. "You want something?" I said. "The flash drive," he said. "You don't know what you're holding." "I know exactly what I'm holding," I said. "And I know you killed my son." A pause. Then, calm as ever. "You want to believe that. It's easier than the truth." "What's the truth?" "That he got in over his head. That Kayla tried to save him. That you're about to ruin her life for no reason." I looked through the glass at his face, clean and unreadable in the dim light. "She ruined her own life," he sighed. "Last chance, Mark. Not tonight." For a moment neither of us moved. Then he smiled, small, slow, almost pitying, and turned to leave. His car started, headlights flashing once before he pulled away. I locked the door again, but my hands were shaking. I knew what that smile meant. He wasn't done. I turned off my phone, killed the lights, and went to the back room. the wrench still in my hand. The rain had started again, soft against the roof. I didn't sleep. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I'd see the morning. The morning came slow and pale, the kind of gray that never really turns into daylight. I hadn't slept. I sat on the edge of the cot in the break room, boots still on, wrench on the floor beside me. My body felt heavy, but my mind wouldn't quit. Every sound outside made me flinch. The wind against the shutters, a car passing in the distance. By 7, I'd decided. Waiting wasn't helping anyone. I packed the flash drive, Ethan's letter, and the printed files into a small metal box. If something happened to me, someone needed to have them. I slid the box into the trunk of my truck and drove toward Lauren's place. The roads were slick from the night's rain. Every turn felt slower than it should have. My eyes caught every pair of headlights in the rearview mirror. Once or twice I could have sworn I saw the same car behind me. A black SUV, tinted windows. It turned when I turned, stayed back when I slowed down. I pulled into a gas station just to test it. The SUV cruised past, then disappeared into traffic. Maybe coincidence, maybe not. Lauren's house looked smaller than I remembered, like grief had shrunk it. She answered the door still in her robe, hair pulled back, eyes tired. "Mark, what's going on?" I handed her the box. "Keep this safe. Don't open it. If something happens to me, take it straight to Detective Cole." Her brow furrowed. "You're scaring me again." "Just promise me," I said. "No one else sees it." She nodded slowly, then touched my arm. "Whatever this is, you can still stop." I shook my head. "It's already moving." I turned to leave, but she called after me. "Mark, please, don't do something you can't come back from." I didn't answer. Back in the truck, I sat for a while, watching her through the window. For a second, I almost went back inside. Then my phone buzzed. A new message, no name, just coordinates and a line of text. "If you want the truth, come alone." It was a location outside town, near the quarry. I stared at the screen, pulse thudding in my neck. That was where it was going to happen, one way or another. I started the engine and drove toward the end of something. The quarry sat on the edge of town like an open wound, deep, quiet, forgotten. The last time I'd been out there was years ago with Ethan, teaching him how to shoot beer cans off a fence post. Now the same dirt road stretched ahead, washed out from the rain, tires crunching over loose gravel. The coordinates led me to a clearing near the edge. No other cars, no sound but the wind moving through the trees and the faint drip of water down the rock face. I killed the engine and waited. My heart beat slow but hard, every thud echoing in my ears. After a few minutes, I saw headlights cutting through the fog. A silver BMW rolled to a stop beside me. Jared stepped out, umbrella in hand, perfectly dry like he'd never set foot in a storm in his life. He looked calm, too calm. "Appreciate you coming," he said, voice easy like we were meeting for coffee. "You've made this complicated, Mark." "Truth usually is," I said. He smiled. "You think you've got me cornered? That little drive of yours? Worthless. You don't have the full picture." "I've got enough." He took a few slow steps closer, shoes sinking in the mud. "You've got scraps, things that make you feel righteous. But your son, he wasn't the hero you think he was." I clenched my fists, every muscle tight. "Careful. He came to me for money," Jared said. "A lot of it. He begged. I gave him a loan to save the shop, but he couldn't pay it back. Kayla tried to help him. She did everything right. But when he found out she came to me first," he paused, tilting his head. "He snapped. You know how pride works. Must run in the family." "You're lying." "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not. But he wasn't murdered, Mark. He panicked. He lost control. All I did was clean up the mess." The words hit like a hammer. My chest tightened, but my mind stayed sharp. He wanted me off balance. He wanted me angry. I took a step forward, mud sucking at my boots. "You talk like you didn't cut his brakes." His smile faltered. "You can't prove that." "No," I said, voice low. "But I don't need to. I just need you to know I know." For the first time, his composure cracked. Just a flicker. His eyes darted past me to the tree line behind my truck, and that's when I realized he hadn't come alone. A shadow moved near the trees. Another man, tall, wearing a dark coat. Jared sighed like this was inevitable. You could have walked away, Mark, but now you're part of it. I took one slow step back, hand sliding toward my pocket where Ethan's letter rested. The paper felt warm, solid, grounding. I already was, I said. Then the second man moved closer, hand lifting something that caught the light, and I realized the truth was about to come with a cost. The gun glinted once in the fog before it disappeared into the gray. My pulse jumped, loud in my ears. The second man stepped closer, the crunch of gravel under his boots sharp and deliberate. Jared didn't move. He just stood there, calm as ever, eyes on me like I was already buried. You don't have to do this, I said, voice steady but low. You think killing me makes this go away? You've already lost. Jared gave a faint smile. No, Mark? You did when you started digging. He nodded toward the man behind me. Let's finish this. The sound that followed wasn't the click of a gun. It was the roar of an engine. Headlights burst through the fog, blinding. A black SUV tore into the clearing, spraying mud and light in every direction. Both men turned, shouting something I couldn't hear over the growl of the engine. The SUV skidded to a stop between us. The driver's door flew open. Police! Drop it! Detective Cole. The man with the gun froze, then turned to run, but another pair of officers came from the tree line, flashlights cutting through the mist. The gun hit the mud with a dull thud. Jared raised his hands, smirk still plastered on his face. Took you long enough? He said. Cole moved fast, pinning his arms, cuffing him. Save it for the station, he said, voice cold. Then he looked at me. You all right, Mark? I nodded, breath ragged. How did you… Your ex called me, he said. Said you dropped something off and looked like hell. I figured you weren't done making bad decisions. He glanced at Jared. Guess that was the right call. Jared's voice cut through the fog. You think this changes anything? The files won't hold. Kayla's already gone. She took her share and vanished. Cole shoved him toward the car. We'll see about that. I stood there, shaking, every muscle drained. The fog had thinned, revealing the quarry edge behind us. Steep black water waiting below, the place Ethan used to skip stones when he was a boy. I looked down at it now and felt the weight of everything finally settle. Cole's hand landed on my shoulder. Go home, Mark. It's over. I looked at Jared being pushed into the cruiser, still smiling like he knew something I didn't. No, I said quietly. It's not, because somewhere out there, Kayla was still breathing. And until she wasn't hiding anymore, none of this was finished. By the next morning, the whole town was buzzing. News spread fast in small places like ours. Talk of a businessman in handcuffs, whispers about money laundering, and rumors that my son's death hadn't been what people thought. None of it made me feel better. Jared was behind bars, but the silence he left behind was louder than ever. I sat on my porch, coffee gone cold, watching rain pool on the steps. The world was still gray, but now it felt hollow too. Cole had called just after dawn, said they'd found enough in the flash drive to file charges. Fraud, conspiracy, possibly homicide if the DA bit. But Kayla was gone. Her apartment empty, phone disconnected, car missing. She'd vanished clean. I wasn't surprised. She'd always been good at pretending. The grieving widow, the dutiful wife, the woman who smiled just enough to make people trust her. I replayed every moment I'd seen her since Ethan died. The spa bill, the calm voice, the way her eyes flicked toward the letter in my pocket. She'd known her time was running out even then. By afternoon, I drove to Ethan's shop. The closed sign still hung in the window. Inside, everything smelled like him. Oil, dust, and faint cologne. I walked to his workbench and laid my hands on the counter, feeling the grooves he'd worn into the wood. The ache came back, deep and sharp, but this time it wasn't aimless. It was direction. The phone on the desk buzzed once. Unknown number. I answered. Mark, a woman's voice said. The sound froze me. Calm. Familiar. Kayla, I said. There was a pause, then a quiet laugh. You just don't know when to stop, do you? Where are you? Does it matter? She said. Jared's gone. You got what you wanted. Not yet. She sighed, long and soft. You're angry. I get it. But Ethan's dead because of his own choices. You can dig up every file you want. It won't change that. You were part of it. I was surviving, she said, her tone tightening. You think he told you everything? He owed people, bad people. I didn't make the rules, Mark. I just followed them long enough to walk away alive. You walked away rich, I said. Another pause. Then, you sound just like him. The line went dead. I stared at the phone until the dial tone faded. Then I noticed something. On the desk beside it, a small envelope I hadn't left there. No return address. Just my name, written in her neat, looping hand. My pulse kicked hard. Inside was a single photograph. Kayla standing on a dock, sunlight cutting through her hair, one hand resting on a suitcase. The timestamp read 2 hours ago. On the back, one line written in blue ink. You should have let him go. I set the photo down slowly. She was leaving the country, and I wasn't done chasing ghosts yet. I drove straight from the shop to the marina. The photograph hadn't left my hand since I opened that envelope. The timestamp, 2 hours old, kept flashing in my mind like a clock I couldn't turn off. If she'd taken that picture here, she hadn't gotten far. The docks were quiet, except for the slap of waves against wood and the rattle of metal chains. The air smelled like diesel and salt, sharp enough to sting. A few fishermen were packing up for the day, faces hidden under hoods. I showed the photo to the dock attendant, a man in his 60s with a voice that sounded like gravel. Yeah, he said, squinting. She rented a boat, paid cash, headed out maybe 40 minutes ago. Said she was meeting someone near the outer channel. Alone? He shrugged. Had a small duffel bag. Didn't look nervous. People who run don't look nervous anymore. They look done. I thanked him, then turned toward the water. Fog was rolling in from the east, swallowing the horizon. Somewhere out there, a motor hummed faintly. A low, steady sound. I knew it was her. I climbed into one of the rental boats, untied it, and started the engine. The dock worker called something after me, but the wind carried it away. The engine roared, and I pushed forward into the mist. The water stretched endless and colorless, like liquid glass. My hands shook on the wheel, not from fear, but from the weight of everything pressing down. Ethan's voice, Jared's smirk, Kayla's calm goodbye. The sound of the motor was the only thing keeping my thoughts from splitting apart. After 10 minutes, I saw it. A white boat, engine idling near the breakwater. The shape of a woman at the stern, hair loose, coat whipping in the wind. I cut my engine and drifted closer. "Kayla!" I shouted. She turned. Even from a distance, she didn't look startled. Just tired. "You should have stayed home, Mark. You killed him." She shook her head. "I tried to save him. He made it impossible." I eased closer, the hulls of our boats rocking in rhythm. "You helped Jared steal everything he built. You lied to his face." Her eyes glinted in the fog. "You think I wanted this life? You think I wanted any of it? Jared owned him. Ethan was drowning. The only way out was to play along. I just played better." "You played him," I said. "And now he's gone because of it." For the first time, her voice cracked. "You think you know grief, Mark? You buried your son. I buried my future." The wind picked up, the fog curling around us like smoke. I saw her glance over her shoulder, toward the open water, maybe toward someone else waiting. "Don't do this," I said. "Don't run. It ends today." She gave a small, almost sad smile. It already ended. Then she reached for something under the bench. A pistol, small, silver, clean. My pulse kicked hard. "Kayla, put it down." Her hand trembled, but her aim didn't. "You don't understand. They don't let people walk away." The sound came before I could move. One sharp crack that ripped through the fog. She dropped before the echo faded. For a second, I just stood there, boat rocking beneath me, air filled with gunpowder and salt. My breath came in broken gasps. The pistol slid from her hand, clattering against the deck. I moved toward her slowly, knelt down, checked her pulse. Nothing. The wind had died. The sea went still. In the distance, a seagull cried once and vanished into the fog. I sat beside her, eyes on the water, and whispered, "It's over." But it didn't sound like victory. It sounded like silence. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out Ethan's letter, and read the last line again. One I'd memorized 100 times. "Don't lose yourself trying to save me." The sun broke weakly through the fog, touching the waves with pale gold. I closed my eyes, let the wind hit my face, and finally, after everything, breathed. It took the Coast Guard 2 hours to find us. By then, the fog had lifted, and the sea had turned to glass under a pale stretch of sky. I told them everything. Jared, the files, the confession, the shot. They said I was lucky she hadn't turned the gun on me first. I didn't feel lucky. I just felt empty. By the time I made it back to shore, the world looked wrong. Brighter maybe, but thinner too, like everything solid had been scraped away. I gave my statement at the precinct, handed Cole the gun and the photo, then drove home with the windows down and the radio off. The air smelled like rain and salt and metal, the kind of smell that never really leaves you. At home, the house felt smaller, quieter than before. I poured a cup of coffee that went cold before I even tasted it. Ethan's letter sat on the table, edges soft from how often I'd folded and unfolded it. I read it one last time, slowly, like a prayer. Please don't let her twist what happened. Take care of the shop. It's yours now. For a long time, I just sat there. Then I got up, drove to the shop, and flipped the closed sign to open. The light buzzed weakly in the window, but it stayed lit. The air inside smelled the same, oil, rubber, and old music. I walked to the workbench, ran a hand over the wood, and started the radio. The first song that came on was one Ethan loved, Springsteen, Gravel, and Heart. I could almost hear him singing along, off-key but loud. For the first time, that memory didn't hurt. It just filled the space. When Miguel came by later that day, I told him the shop was his to help run. "We'll do it right," I said. The way he would have. He nodded, eyes bright, and got to work without another word. The days that followed were simple, quiet. I fixed engines, drank coffee that stayed warm, and watched the world go by without needing to chase it. Every now and then, someone asked about the story, the accident, the arrests. But I didn't tell it. Some truths aren't for sharing, they're for keeping. One evening I stood outside the shop, sun sinking low, sky painted orange. The sign glowed behind me. Across the street, the diner's neon flickered to life. I could almost hear Ethan laughing again, telling me I'd finally learned to slow down. I smiled, just a little. "I took care of it, kid," I said. "Just like you asked." And for the first time since the day I lost him, the words didn't break me. They set me free. End.